I can now share my screen and okay. Great. Please confirm that you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I was saying that, I mean, success is why you were hired in the first place. If you work with an organization, with any kind of organization, the entire reason they hired you is so you can help the organization achieve a desired end goal. So of course, if you're achieving that, you want to let your clients, your stakeholders know that they made the right choice. They didn't waste their investment or their money or time or attention on you. So it's really important that you're showing success. What other reasons are there for you to toot your own horn or blow your own trumpet? First of all, sharing successes is important because it demonstrates growth and thought leadership. We've already established that every organization, every brand, every person goes into a particular field to succeed. I don't think there's anyone that starts out anything hoping to fail. So when you do achieve success, you should share it. You should make other people in your space know, because it shows that you've grown. You've overcome certain circumstances that maybe newer people have not, and you're in a better capacity to speak about that particular field. Just to define what thought leadership is really quickly, thought leadership is being able to set yourself up in a position where you are recognized as, let me just call it, a subject matter expert in your space, such that whenever anyone thinks about that space, you're one of the first, if not the first brands or people to come to mind. So sharing success, imagine if I was in a field, well, let's use our own field, communications, for example. If there's somebody who always talks about communications, talks about, shares tips on how to develop communication, shares successes on what they've accomplished in their field, is constantly showing that they're growing. If, let's say, 2 weeks down the line, for example, somebody says, oh, I'm looking to hire a consultant for something regarding conversation, automatically the first person who's going to pop into your mind is that person who has been sharing how well they've been doing in that field, because they have demonstrated thought leadership in that space. The other reason you should share your successes is to motivate individuals and teams to push boundaries and improve on past accomplishments. We're here in Nigeria, for those who are not joining us from Nigeria, here in Nigeria, there's a saying that when you praise someone who has done well, they do even better. And that's exactly one of the reasons you want to share successes. Beyond your external audience, it motivates your own teams to continue to do well. If I did something right and all of a sudden one day I saw it on my organization's blog, for example, or my experience was used as a concept to come up with some jingle or an ad, it would motivate me to do better. So maybe next time I'll be the star of the next ad, who knows? But it does motivate people. The next reason you want to do that is because it shows what is working well. Everybody experiences different challenges in their space, and when people share their successes, it can help other people who are just starting out, or other brands who are just starting out, to discover what works. Beyond other brands, in fact, in organizations where there are multiple products, if one product happens to be doing really well and is sharing the success of how they're able to accomplish that, it can be something that they can take for learning and improvement of other products and services. So if Coca-Cola is doing well, for example, and maybe Fanta isn't doing as well, they can find out what is the reason for the success in Coca-Cola, what are they doing differently, and use it as an avenue to improve the other brands that may be struggling. So that's one reason for sharing successes. And finally, it increases trust and credibility, and can even influence or activate your stakeholder or client behavior in a desired direction. When you share your successes, it makes your potential clients trust you. They believe that you know what you're doing, because surely if you're doing well, then you must be doing something right. And once they see that you continue to share successes, eventually you'll be able to move them further along your marketing funnel or your sales funnel. So from just being aware of your brand, for example, you keep sharing successes, you keep talking about, oh, this other person used that, this person used this, or this is what we've accomplished. In the last 10 years, we've reach 10 million subscribers, or whatever the metric for success is for you. Over time, that one person who needed that slight push to become a subscriber will say, okay, if they're doing so well, if like they have 10 million people already who are using this product, then I think it's safe for me to go ahead and use it. And that can be something that will influence them to move along on your sales funnel and take that desired action of maybe using your product or buying your brand or patronizing your project or investing in your project, whatever it is. So the good thing about sharing successes, right, is that it's multi-format and it's multi-channel. So when you share successes, it can come in different forms. You can share your successes as videos, infographics, blog posts. You can use it in news reports. You can use it for TV and radio ads, right? You can use it in printed assets like your company profiles and company brochures. So let's really examine a scenario here. Let's say that your organization recently received a prestigious industry award, or it hit a significant milestone. That's definitely a success and it should be shared, right? And you're everywhere talking about this, like you are really blowing your trumpet here. You're telling everyone who cares to listen that you've hit this milestone, you've made this accomplishment. Oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. Okay, my slide is being dramatic. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, give me a second. I went way back. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. So I was saying that imagine if your organization received that award and you're talking about it everywhere. I would like to ask, and this is maybe you can share this in the comments, do you think that there are any potential dangers or adverse effects of blowing your own trumpet? I mean, if this thing happened and we've just said that it's really important, it has all these benefits, there are all these benefits why you should share your successes, you should tell the world what you're doing right. So could there be possibly any danger in doing just that? Is there any potential adverse effect of blowing your own trumpet? If you have responses to that, I would love to see it in the slides. Okay, so Emisi says the advantages. Great. What do you think the advantages are? You can share one of them. Anyone else? Does anyone else have a comment on that? Yeah, Ali says there, exactly. Emisi says people will start looking out for your mistakes. Very true. That's actually accurate. Okay, depends on the particular industry and what information is being shared. True. That's also something to consider. I think we can take one more person's comments. Yeah, it does, exactly. Yeah, I don't think so. Blowing your trumpet, Irene says, blowing your trumpet further solidifies your place in the industry, e.g. in the oil and gas, definitely. Emisi says, yeah, she's into her last comment where she says, people can see any wrong moves that you make and it can be blown greatly. Yeah. Felgona, I hope I'm not pronouncing your name, says your work does not necessarily speak for itself, so you need to blow your own trumpet. Okay, those were very correct, very apt comments. However, there can be some danger in blowing your own trumpet. It's not all bad. Sometimes it could lead to some adverse effects, and we'll see why in the next slide. So that's going to take us into the next section where we're going to talk about a success sharing disaster. So when does sharing successes become a disaster, or when does it lead to adverse effects? So let's continue with our previous scenario. Your organization or your brand has attained a major milestone, like we said, and you decided to add that and some other successes into a jingle or an ad. So I'm going to quickly read the copy to you guys. You can play some background music in your head if you like. We are the foremost brewing company in Africa. No shade to any company, please. That's the first idea that came into my head. We have produced over 100 billion bottles of our niche beverage, X. Very mysterious. We hold the largest market share with more than 73% of people aged 19 to 65 consuming at least one bottle of X every day. In the next few months, following our recent partnership with Y, we will be the only beverage to have been consumed in all 7 of the world's continents. In fact, to end it, we are successful. So what do you think about this ad? Just leave your comments in the chat. Imagine if somebody, you were on the radio, you're just minding your business, doing the Lord's work, and then you're on the radio and you just hear the opening strings of background music, and then this is the copy you hear. This is what you hear in the ad. We are the foremost brewing company. We hold the largest market share. In the next few months, we will be the only beverage to be consumed in 7 of the world's countries. We are successful. Dun dun dun. And it ends. Thank you. Damilola says it sounds pompous. I agree. It does sound really pompous, sounds braggy. What is the point? It's a bit too much for me. Yeah, what's the point of this success? Exactly. These are very, very apt comments, very accurate. So sometimes when you share your successes, you run the risk of being perceived as braggy. Let's look at another example and see. We'll go to the next slide. So another one is this is another scenario. You work with, I don't know why I like the letter X, but you work with XRF, a humanitarian organization that provides basic amenities and emergency care to survivors of natural disasters. Recently, Hurricane Gypsy, I like that name, by the way, destroyed San Mera, a small island community. XRF sets up Camp Hope to attend to them. You've now provided care to 350,000 people and you want to share this on social media. Here is your post. And the post is, as soon as Hurricane Gypsy hit, we were the first on the scene. We set up a camp that catered to displaced families, providing shelter, food, water, and emergency care and treatment to a total of 350,000 people. Again, what thoughts do you have regarding this post? What do you think about this post? Do you think this was the best way to go about it? Damilola says cringe. I know, very cringe. Like, I'm in your face, like we're the first. Nobody can beat us, I know. Eva shouts no, me too. I'm with you on that. It's a no from me. Exactly. So, yeah, Missy says not at all. It's more like we came there first. Exactly. So what these 2 scenarios are trying to show us is that while it's awesome, you need to be communicating your success, because like we've all said in the chats, your work won't always speak for itself. Sometimes you just need to be in the faces of your audience and say, you know what, we've done this and it's great, it's a big deal. But sometimes if you aren't careful, if you aren't really purposeful and intentional about how you are sharing those successes, you could end up with a success sharing disaster. Now, we live in a culture, right, where self-promotion can be seen as bragging, just like we all said in the chats, or something negative. And sharing your own successes over time could make you look shady. Like, really, if you're so successful, why must you always be the one to talk about it? Why can't there be somebody who has actually benefited from that success come out and say, you know what, these people are really, really great. They're everything they say they are. You could be sounding too much like a sales pitch, and some people are immediately put off by that. The first one was almost like that. You know, you're just minding your business, you hear a jingle, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this, and it sounds just like a sales pitch. People will just mute you or put you off or walk away. Do you ever have those experiences of when you're on the road going somewhere and somebody is giving you a flyer saying, or you're just going somewhere and they're like, oh, I work with so and so vacation and tours, we can, and you're just like, no, sorry, not interested. Even if maybe last week you recently thought about using your vacation time to go and leave to some exotic location. Just the fact that as soon as they met you, they launched right into their ad campaign. No hello, okay, yeah, they probably say hello. There's a hello, there's a hi, and there's a, you need us, we are this, we are whatever, we have discounts. And you're just like, no, please, I don't have time for that. And then people are constantly bombarded with information. Every day, like just look at your own social media timelines, look at the news. You barely get past one piece of news or one piece of information, and you are bombarded with like 5 more. So if you aren't careful, you could lose the attention of your clients, your customers, or your stakeholders if you keep sharing successes the same way. So what do we need to do? Oh, I'm going to show you this screen. This is something that shows the dilemma we found ourselves in. So the picture on the left is about a person who does not share successes at all. And he's saying, oh, I'm the best at what I do. And this other person is like, oh, I didn't know you do any kind of stuff. And he says, yeah, I don't like to brag. That's why I won't provide any evidence or details. So this is actually the impression you give your audience when you don't share any of your successes. And then you're like, okay, fine. Since they want successes, I'll share it. But then there's this picture on the left titled Bragging, a Physical Interpretation. And it says, hey, check out this thing I accomplished. And this guy is practically shoving it in your face. Like he has practically climbed the other guy. This is what we are faced with. This is the dilemma we are faced with. So we need to come up with a strategy that helps us share our successes such that we don't leave our audience, our potential clients, our current existing customers in the dark. And it doesn't seem like we're pushing it onto their faces and basically irritating them to the point that they don't even want to have anything to do with us. So how we accomplish that? And this is where I introduce the solution: humanization and storytelling. So if you're feeling anything like the guy in this picture who is just frustrated by this dilemma, let's go quickly and talk about what we can do to share our successes in a way that is more impactful and that will resonate more with our audience. So I'll just define these two concepts really quickly, but I'll start by saying that these two concepts are really nothing new. We've been doing them in some capacity for many, many, many years. Storytelling is as old as time. Humanization is defined as portraying or endowing something with human characteristics or attributes, to make something human. But the definition I particularly like is that humanization means to improve or change something in a way that makes it more suitable or pleasant for people. That, I think, is what I want you to hold on to, like just keep that at the back of your mind. And of course, we know that storytelling is the art of communicating using stories and narratives. So now we're trying to merge these two concepts to share our successes. We're trying to humanize our successes with stories. So why do we want to do that in the first place? The first thing you need to think of is that your audience is made of people. And people want to be sold things. People want to engage with other people. They don't want to engage with numbers. They don't want to engage with robots. They don't want to engage with apps. They don't want to engage with artificial intelligence. They want to engage with other people like themselves. And that is one of the things that will influence them when they are making the decision of what brands to patronize. They also want to know that they're using stuff that is used by other people. I mean, how would you feel if somebody came to market a cosmetic product to you, for example, and says, oh, it's really popular in the metaverse? I mean, that may not be so bad, but in the metaverse, it's not yet real people, like actual human beings. So that would put you back like, okay, but is there anybody in this, our Nigerian verse or in the African verse or in the world verse currently that is using it? And the person says, oh no, it's just the flagship product we've developed for just people in the metaverse. And you're like, okay, that already puts you back. And you want to know that the people behind these products that you're using, the people behind these organizations that you patronize, that you work with, the projects that you're involved in are empathetic. They are actual real people. Have you ever read a piece of copy or a piece of news or social media content and you just felt like, nah, it can't be a real human being that wrote this. This must have been written by a robot. This must have been written by a robot. That is something that you don't want to do. So humanization actually helps you to relate with your audience better, and it increases. Why do I keep doing this? And it increases your acceptance of your brand. The next reason why is that why storytelling now, the argument in case for storytelling is that studies have even shown that listening to stories activates the brain in multiple ways and causes them to have a deeper impact on the audience than what is obtainable when information is simply passed. As a person who comes from a long line of storytellers, I can tell you that that is a fact. I'll give you a personal example. One of the subjects that growing up I was forced to have an interest in by my dad was history. And I couldn't understand why I needed to know about old dead people. I couldn't keep the dates straight. I couldn't keep the people straight. It was difficult. But you see, one thing I always loved to hear about was the story, and my apologies if this is offensive in any way, but like one of the stories I always loved to hear my dad tell me was the story of, the Biafra, the Civil War, how it happened. Till now, I can't tell you what year it happened, and I assure you, my father has told me millions of times. I cannot remember. I know he was a small boy when it happened. I remember details that he has given me in stories, but I cannot remember the facts. I don't know who shot who. I don't know who starved who. I don't know who took what agreement and who sold out the other. But I remember the story of Biafra. This is a very good example of what happens when you continue to inundate your audience with numbers and facts and figures and quid pro quos and really quick comments, and you just can't connect it for them in a story. So we're going to see really quickly just why storytelling is so impactful. This picture actually shows 4 ways or 4 things that storytelling does. And it's actually the psychology of storytelling, why it's so powerful. It shows that storytelling does something called neural coupling. It activates parts in your brain that allows the listener to turn the story into their own ideas and experience it thanks to a process called neural coupling. So when you tell stories, your brain starts to make your listener basically imagine the story themselves and feel like they're in the story. And I don't need to tell you how powerful that is. The second thing that storytelling does is that it mirrors. Listeners will experience similar brain activity to each other and also to the speaker. And that is awesome, because one of the first things we know in communication is that they tell you that if you're passing a message to your receiver, if the sender is passing a message to the receiver and the receiver does not have the same understanding as what the sender is passing, then there's a disconnect, right? And that's what we always want to avoid. It's a communication failure. But they're telling us here that by telling stories, you will most certainly always have the same understanding and experience. So me, the sender, and all my listeners, however many they are, because of the power of storytelling, will have similar experiences and brain activity. So there's no chance of you losing any of them. The other thing is actually a really hormonal chemical explanation. The brain releases something called dopamine. If anybody here has any background in sciences, you know that dopamine is something that is associated with energy, electricity, charge. You're just really happy, really excited. And whenever a person listens to a story, your brain releases that hormone into the system, making it an emotionally charged event and making it easier to remember things with greater accuracy. Another article I read said that the brain also releases something called oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone that mothers produce when they have their children, and that's why they have such a strong bond. Some people in love also have it, right? And what it does is to bond you to something. It attaches you to whatever it is that that made your body release that hormone. So when you tell a story to somebody, there is an attachment to that person, or there is an attachment to that story, to that circumstance, or to that scenario, and the person will almost never forget it, just like what happened with me and my dad's Biafra stories. And then finally, cortex activity. When processing facts, 2 areas of the brain are activated. And a well-told story can engage many additional areas, including the motor cortex, sensory cortex, and frontal cortex. So when people are reading text or just receiving information in one normal manner, there is no variation. I mean, if I say I've reached 100 million subscribers this month, that's it. I've reached 100 million subscribers this month. But when I'm telling you the story of how I reached 100 million subscribers or what I did, there is a variation in how things happen. So there are different experiences. Your brain is being engaged, you're thinking, you're feeling, you're reasoning. So many things are happening at the same time. And I'm sure we all want this for our audiences. So now that we've seen that, there are other reasons. Of course, stories will help you talk without sounding like a sales pitch. We've already established that that is not what we want. It makes your messages stick with your audience. It helps you to infuse human elements that will persuade your audience. When you have human elements in your story, it's like it helps you with marketing, right? When somebody hears that somebody else who they can relate to has experienced something relating to your product, it makes it easier for them to join that bandwagon. If someone is saying, oh, I use this application, or I use this product, or after I started working with this company, this, and this happened to me, and they have a similar pain point, it's easier for them to be persuaded to use that product. The next thing it does is that it builds a connection with your brand, which increases customer trust and loyalty, and it gives you a competitive advantage. Of course, there are so many other organizations in the same field as you, producing similar, if not the same products. The only reason why people will stick with your brand is because you're appealing to their emotion. You are tugging at their heartstrings, so to speak. And finally, it unites people in a shared experience. I will go into a bit more detail later with the cases in point, but we know that this is something that people that use Apple, football clubs, Coca-Cola, if you even look at any of their adverts, you feel like you're among those people. If you see a Barcelona advert, an advert for Barcelona Football Club, you feel like you're one of them. You can relate to the victory, you can relate to the joy, you can relate to everything happening there. And these are people in continents spread far across from each other, united in a single experience of a story about a brand that they use. So we've come to the meat of the matter. How do you then tell a story that sticks with people? Well, before you can do that, the first thing you need to understand is what's in a story. These are elements of a story that you need to factor in. The first element is your character or a subject. That is, who is your story about? You need a main character, preferably not you, but you need a main character about your story. You need to show somebody who is benefiting or who is going through the process, the story arc in your story. You need a plot or a theme or an angle. Essentially, what is your story about? And you can have multiple stories, multiple angles, multiple themes from one single product, depending on the different pain points that people encounter in the course of your project. The next thing you want to add into your story, or something else that has to be in your story, is a setting. So you need to establish in what context, situations, backgrounds, or periods of time does your story take place. And as I'm mentioning this, I want you to think of any story at all, even if it's an advert you've seen. At the end of that advert, you were always able to know who the character was, what the story was about, where the story was happening. So you need to be as specific as possible. Is the story happening in a village? Is it happening in an urban, a suburban town? Is this among young people? You know, is it at night? Is it in the day? What is going on? Is it among poor people? If it's people who don't have money, how bad are things for them? So you see adverts where they're trying to establish, maybe, let's say adverts where somebody is using some kind of, I don't know, let's say cryptocurrency platform or Forex trading platform. They start off the story showing someone who can't afford to pay rent, for example. So they establish something like the landlord chasing him away, so that you have that in your mind that, oh, this person is in dire straits, right? He's experiencing some financial difficulty. And then there's the conflict. What challenge or difficulty does your main character face? What is he or she trying to solve or overcome? So the conflict is usually the pain point. Why do people need to use your product? Is it because they are finding it difficult to, let's say you own you work for maybe a logistics company, for example. So the conflict in that case is being able to transfer goods or products or services from one place to another in record time, in good condition, right? That's the challenge. You need to establish that. So in every story, there must be a conflict or a challenge, something that your character needs to overcome. And next, or finally, the main ingredient is your resolution, which is the success. How does your subject overcome his or her challenges? And this is where you demonstrate what your project or your product, or you, if you may even be the product, what you have been able to help them accomplish. Next, let's share a few tips. So once you've included this, you have these main ingredients, you've decided this is my character, this is my setting, this is my theme, you know, this is the challenge, and this is the success. The first thing you want to do is think about your audience. You're not writing for yourself. You're writing to reach an audience. Make sure that you always keep that in mind and that you write to them in a language they can understand. What that means is that if there are technical terms that you need to use, you may need to find a way of making it easier to understand. Break it down. Don't put words that are going to leave your audience confused. Remember, the whole point of a story is engagement. So what you don't want to do is include something that takes away from that engagement in your story. Next thing, remember that attention is easily lost. So lure your user in with something that grabs their attention. I want us to keep thinking about any story that has really grabbed your attention at this point, anytime, an advert, a book you read, whatever it was. In the first paragraph of that book, you knew you were going to continue reading the story. There was just something that grabbed your attention. Maybe they did it by starting the end from the beginning. Maybe they did it by putting you straight into the middle of a conflict. So at the beginning of the story, there was a big problem, like a pregnant woman who is already in labor and she's crying and shouting and they're stuck in traffic, for example. If somebody started a story with that, I would be hooked, because first I want to see whether the woman gives birth in the car or not, or if she doesn't, how does she get out of it, for example. So lure your user in. Don't bore them. People know whether they are going to read your story or engage with whatever content you're sharing with them within the first couple of seconds. Make it worth their while. Next, be clear, direct, and simple. Get to the heart of the matter. What is the key message you want them to take away from this story? Do you want them to know that when they use your product, they are going to be able to become CEO in the next 2 days? If that's what you want them to know, get to it. Put the most important information first. Be clear, be direct and simple. Don't let them leave that story in doubt about what you are trying to say. Always have your end in sight. Again, this is related to the last point. What do you want to accomplish with this story? Are you trying to convert someone from a potential client to a customer? Do you want somebody to download an app? Do you want them to subscribe to your newsletter? Are you just trying to inform them? Do you want to build a network? What is the goal of your story? You want them to buy your product. You want them to know that you've changed, your brand is changing, your brand identity is changing, but you want to assure them that it's still the same quality, nothing is different. You want them to know about a merger. What is it you want them to know? Always have it in sight and make sure that it's visible at each point in the story. Another tip that is often overlooked is to write what you would like to read. If you don't enjoy your story, I'm here to tell you that your audience is not going to enjoy the story. Remember, it's a story and it's dealing with evoking emotions. So if you can't feel it, your audience won't feel it, and that's fact. Next thing is, don't be your own hero. Get your customers involved. This is something I'm really particular about because, again, we kept talking about blowing our own trumpets, but it would be nice every once in a while to have our customers blow the trumpet for us. And I'm going to show you a few things you can do to make that happen. So getting customers to participate in your own story. First, you want to pick the right customer. So pick a customer who is actually responsive and can speak to a unique pain point that your product addresses. So you don't want to pick someone who has never interacted with your product, that's for sure. You want to pick someone who is even willing, who understands your product, who has used it, maybe for a decent amount of time that can yield the result you're talking about. So if someone bought your product today, don't call them tomorrow and say, will you like to participate in a success story? Chances are they haven't even experienced your product long enough to be able to share the success with anyone. The second thing you want to do is design a fire interview guide. You want to come up with a list of questions that will get you the content and information that you need. Ooh, people are saying dopamine is associated with pleasure and want you, okay, thanks guys, I'm enjoying the comments, great. And then you want to get their consent and approval. This is really, really important. You want to also explain what you need from them. So if you're telling a customer that you want to interview them to participate in a success story, tell them exactly what you need from them. Oh, I require an interview, a photo, and I will be using quotes from the interview in the story. This is where we are going to use it. It will be on our website. It's going to be part of a global campaign that we're doing in all our branches. It will be one of the submissions from Nigeria or from Kenya or from Ghana, wherever. It's going to be on our social media, where it's going to be on our YouTube page. Let them know exactly what they need to expect. Then go ahead and conduct the interview.
But
Sorry? Okay, I thought somebody was adding something. Okay. Next, you want to conduct the interview. So get as much detail as possible about sorry, there's an error there. As much detail as possible about the customer, the challenges they faced. And when I say details about the customer, remember the whole reason for getting your customer to share a success story is because you want potential customers to relate with them. You want to pick someone that's relatable. And the only way you can make somebody who is reading a story relate with a person telling the story is to get information about them. So don't just write Sarah 52 in Abia State. No. Try to tell us what Sarah does. What's her business? What does she do for a living? What does she enjoy? Why did she need the product in the first place? Give us enough detail. Oh, is she a civil servant? Is she a mother? Is she a stay-at-home mom? Is she an entrepreneur? What's about her? So that anybody who is reading it can basically and clearly picture this Sarah in their head and know that this is a real human being, right? That's what you want to do. And then you want to talk about the challenges they faced. What are their pain points? Why was it necessary for them to use your product? Then how did the product help them tackle those pain points? And then what were the benefits and the outcomes from using your product or service? These are things that you want to establish in the interview. So in your interview guide, make sure you're coming up with questions that can help you get this information. Finally, write your story. Right? That's it. Writing is one of those things that you're only able to do by doing. You can read 1,000 books and we can share 1,000 tips and do 1,000 webinars about writing and sharing or developing stories. And the only way you really know whether you learned those things is by actually doing it. So after all is said and done, write that story. When you're done writing the story, I have a few questions you can use to make sure that you're actually humanizing your successes and that your story is passing across the information that you want. The first thing you want to ask yourself after writing the story is, what was the challenge that was addressed in this story? So if you finished writing it and you can't answer this question, or it's not clear, it's ambiguous, then you need to go back and do some editing. What person or family or community was helped? Who is the subject of this story? That's basically what this is asking you. If that doesn't come through clearly, you still need to go back and edit it. And just to be on the safe side, you can even share this with someone and ask and tell somebody else, get a second pair of eyes, ask someone else to read it for you and answer these questions. Do you know who was helped in this story? Can you easily identify who the subject of my story was? The third thing you want to check and make sure is there is, we did X or we did dash and dash happened. What you did, what happened? What did you do and what did it lead to? Did she use the soap and then all her pimples dried up, for example? If that's what happened, say it clearly. Did she attend a coaching seminar? Or did she pay for a coaching session with a life coach, and then she got some tips, and after that she was inspired to apply for her next job, and now she's raking in 6 figures? Say so. And then is there a testimony from your subject to corroborate the story? So that's where the quote from your interview comes in. If the quote is there, great, then your answer to this is yes. And then what is the key message regarding your brand that anyone reading this should take away? Does it come through clearly? So I got a question. Somebody asked, must the questions be in this order? Not necessarily. These are just things you can't, it doesn't have to be in this order, because in storytelling, you want to just write in the way you feel will be best received by your audience. But in whatever order you structure it, you need to make sure that these things are coming through. So like I said, you can start from the end. You can start with the success of your story and work it back into the challenge. You can start with the challenge and work it, like it depends on you, but at the end of the story, make sure you're able to answer these questions. So I hope I answered that person's question, Abdullahi. What is the key message regarding your brand that anyone reading this should take away? So that's your key message. Like I said, you should have an outcome in mind. If you want people to know that you have upgraded your, let's say your story is about an application or a new product, like a drug or a medical procedure or something, or a tool, whatever it is, and you want to tell them that you've there's an upgrade, or there is yeah, the word is upgrade. There's an upgrade, or you've reviewed it and it's better now, but nothing has changed. Make sure that at the end of that story, you too can take that away, or you can give it to someone else and ask the person to check that as well. Because sometimes when you write a story, you're so emotionally invested and you're plugging in mental information that isn't actually in the story itself, right? It's not there, but because you wrote it, you feel it's there, so you're adding it in. So that's where having a second pair of eyes to review for you helps. And then finally, stories are all about emotions. So you want to ask yourself, what emotions should the reader, viewer, or listener feel after reading this story? And do you feel it? Remember, I said if you don't feel whatever emotion you're trying to make your audience feel, they are not going to feel it. So if you want them to feel triumph, oh, I feel like I've succeeded, do you feel that way after reading the story? If your story is based off a happy ever after, do you feel the tingles? Do you get the happy ever after vibe? If your story is supposed to make them feel inspired, like, oh, after this, I can change the world, like what many Apple product introductions feel, they make you feel like, we are risk takers, there's no limit, we can break boundaries, we can scatter the world. If that's what that story is supposed to do, are you feeling like you can go and just scatter your Oga's office, for example? Like, do you feel as inspired as you want other people to feel? And is it evident in that story? If all these things are in order, then I would say that you have successfully humanized your success and you're ready to share it. Now, let's look at some brands that have successfully used storytelling. And this is where I encourage people to leave comments. I just made a reference to Apple. Apple likes to appeal to people who are risk takers. Every time that they want to introduce a new product, since the 2007 and 1984 time that Steve Jobs came to introduce, the first iPhone, all they've done since then is tell stories to make you believe that, they want to appeal to the risk taker in you. They want you to think outside the box. They want to appeal to people who love to be viewed as elite and exclusive. Oh, we are Apple. We have a unique experience, right? We're not like these Androiders. We don't use Androids, we have our own world. We create our own elite exclusive world. And, people who are listening to that story are like, oh man, I really want to be like that, or not, because it's not for everyone, but they have a way of appealing to the risk-taking side of you. And that's what they've done with their storytelling. Every new phone, every new gadget is supposed to push the limits on some risk or on some untapped area that seemingly no one else has been able to tap into. And their audience eats it up. They love it, right? Coca-Cola is the most popular soda in the world, and it celebrates its rich history and its large market share by sharing its appeal to families and how it evokes the spirit of camaraderie and togetherness. Coca-Cola tries to make it look like with them, there is nothing like, with Coca-Cola, there's always a special moment with family. It could be Christmas and it's snowing and you have this whole garage or this whole front yard of snow to rake away. But with a bottle of Coca-Cola, it can become a fun snowman, like that's what Coca-Cola does. It tries to bring wonder and connectedness into their adverts. And that's, once you think of Coca-Cola, you can always think of, oh, it's Coca-Cola, like, they just make it sound so poignant and so happy, and that's what they do. And just to bring it a little home, there's MTN. MTN toots their horn as the network with the largest connection. That's their tagline. Their tagline is everywhere you go. And recent adverts show that they help bridge the distance between people and their loved ones. That's what they want to accomplish. They want to show you that it doesn't matter where you are. All you need is an MTN line and you can be right beside people you care about. So right now, I'd like us to share other examples of brands, local, international, any ones that have successfully used storytelling, or any examples you have that have successfully used storytelling. So I will be waiting for you guys. Oh, somebody says Nike, exactly. Yeah, Nike, I really like Nike's own approach to using storytelling. because they make you feel like you're not alone, right? They always talk about how they've almost how many million shoes, like how many million 30 people under 30 are wearing Nike shoes, right? Somebody said Eko ni baje. Yeah, okay, true. They've sold Lagosians on that dream. Yeah, that they've sold Lagosians on that dream that this is our Lagos, this is our Lagos, this is our land. It will not spoil, and even people who are aspiring to be governor, even no shade, whether they intend to make Eko Baje or not, they keep adding that in, and it just evokes this spirit of oneness and unity. That's absolutely correct. Somebody says Stanbic IBTC pension managers. Oh, was it Stanbic that did the advert about somebody trying to give directions and was just explaining using coordinates or something? That was a really great story, and I've not forgotten. If it's them, I haven't forgotten it just because of that. Somebody says Emirates. Man, Emirates are just legends. Google, yes, exactly. Google is a great example. Samsung, Safaricom in Kenya, through M-Pesa, you can send money from comfort area. Ooh, that's interesting. Falcona, can you give us more detail? I've actually never heard of them. Somebody says change, APC, haha. Dubai Tourism Department, yes, using Dubai Expo, yes. Yeah, ooh, Samsung is really good. I like the way Samsung is using the approach of celebrities, but not just celebrities showing themselves as real people, like how Samsung fits into your profession or your life or different tasks that you need to perform. So somebody is showing how, she's late for a meeting and she can join and get super clear calls, whatever. She has to go and take a photo shoot and she's late, like stuff like that. I like the way they're making people feel that, you can, it's integrable with any aspect of your life. I think that's really great. Heineken UEFA Champions League. Okay, Debo. Nespresso does great. Blend Tech, really blend. Ooh, okay. I love that. These are really, really, really great examples. So we've all seen that. We know in some degree, Airtel data. Yes, Airtel has been telling some amazing stories. And I think that's even an excellent example because they use different kinds of stories to show different benefits of their project. They've talked about the one about there was this one about a person whose tailor always disappoints, and then they used it as like a kind of satire or ironic story to show that Airtel will never disappoint you. Like with them, you're always sure that they're not going to disappoint, right? Mama Rainbow and the other lady, yes, exactly. There's so many great examples, so many awesome examples. All right, guys. So I'll just end my presentation now with the hallowed words of Nike. Just do it. Stop worrying about whether the story is perfect or not. Just tell it. Tell your story. Humanize it. Just start from somewhere. And you'll see that the more you continue to do this, the easier it will be. And with time, you will be a storytelling genius. Thank you. And I'll look forward to hearing your comments and questions if you have any.
Wow. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Please let us give a round of applause to Emerald, because even aside from the content, the presentation itself told a very compelling story. So thank you so much. This has been really great. We're going to go into question and answer now, but I also have a personal question. And when you were talking about getting the feedback, the slide about the testimonials, the interview of the users, I had interesting encounters with two sets of clients that work in, it's not like the industry is regulated. So one of it is she does like coaching and, all this relationship counseling. And she was trying to promote the importance of premarital counseling, for example. And I had this nice campaign idea, but the problem was that her clients are very private. So it was so hard to get them to do the campaign, to give testimonials. Some of them have been married 5 years, 10 years, but she can't tell this story. So I wonder, for people like that you're not able to get your customers to share, how do you go about that?
I think that's an excellent example. So in stories like that, where you're not able to get your direct customers to share, what you can do is to come up with a person who will be impacted by your customer's decision. So like in this example where obviously it's about premarital counseling and all of that, they really don't want to put themselves out there by saying what the problem is. For example, you can create a pseudo scenario about somebody who was on the reverse side of this. So a person who didn't do premarital counseling, you can actually stage some things like that. So it's not every time you may have the ability to get your customer to participate in the story, but you should recognize that you can't always be the one to tell your story. You should tell the story once in a while from your customer's point of view, even if it isn't your exact customer. So you can get someone, you can create like a video idea where somebody acts like that. So even if it's not a real customer that's coming out to say it, because it's somebody who is representing a real customer, the message will still be passed. I hope that answered your question. Hello? Hello?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Emerald. So I was just typing, if anybody has any questions, you can either raise up your hand or you can also type it in the chat so Emerald can have it. I see a few comments about the slides. Will you be able to share the slides with us so that we can?
Gladly, yes, I will.
Yeah, awesome. So once you share with us, we'll share with everyone. So any questions? Let's see. There's no hand up. Okay, I'm not sure anybody has any question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I don't think anybody has any questions.
I'll take it that everybody understood it then.
But thank you so much. This was really, really insightful. And for people that want to connect with you and engage further, how can they do that?
Okay, yeah. So I can share my email. I'll put it in the chats right now, and also share my LinkedIn page. I am usually available on there, and we can discuss other connection points from there. So my email is Emerald, my surname, which might be tricky to spell for others, so I'll just write it here, at gmail.com. So I just sent that. Yeah, so my email is emerald.awa-agwu@gmail. I didn't put it.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I see the comments. Yes, you're a great storyteller. So please, yes, do this more. And we're also hoping that you get to also facilitate more sessions for our members as well. But really, really thank you. Thank you to everyone that joined. Again, sorry to those. Some people joined an hour early and stayed on. Thank you so much, Felgona. Thank you, Evelyn, members from Kenya, Ghana. We really appreciate you here. So we'll be sharing details. We'll share the recording and the slides once we get them, and then we'll also share details about our next webinar, which is going to be next month. But just by the way of announcement, if you're in Kigali, we're having an event on Wednesday with members in Kigali, and on the 28th, we'll also be having an event for our members in Nairobi. So you can check all of these details on our social media pages, and please also register as well. So I see a question that just came in. I don't know, it was sent as a direct message. So let me post that to you, Emerald, so that you can see it. So I've sent it to you.
Okay. So someone asks, what is your advice for an organization that doesn't sell a solution, but advocates for cooperation among its members? That's a really great question. My advice for such an organization would be, what you need to be sharing is your brand story or your work culture. So you want to show people the success. What happens in a place where members are working easily together? So you don't always have to sell a solution. It doesn't have to be a tangible product, but there's always a success. So you need to first identify what's your success, what's your best case scenario. Two, who is your audience? Is your audience an internal group? Like, are you trying to reach people who are in your own organization or your own association or outside? Now, when you do this, what are the best channels for you to reach them? Once you are able to answer these three questions, there are always ways to do it. You could come up with some kind of, the first idea that came into my head is something like a newsletter campaign, or some kind of campaign that says something like, we do great work when we, and then you share an example of a time where cooperation really solved the problem, like things were going under and going haywire, and then cooperation was because people worked together, they were able to fix it. And you can still, if your members are actually the people using the same product that you're advocating to your members, you can actually get those who have been able to imbibe that culture of cooperation to share their experiences. Get one or two to come and say how, working freeing themselves to cooperate and collaborate with other people helped them in the work and helped them to maximize their results. So it's still very doable. Stories are something that can be told in any scenario. What you just need to do is articulate who your audience is, what the key message is, and what the success is, and then find the best people to tell the story. I think those are my tips for that question.
Thank you, Emerald. I know we have to let you go, but a question just occurred to me.
Sure.
There's also another dimension of storytelling where you're presenting stuff to your stakeholders, whether internal or external. And instead of you just presenting facts or information, you're taking them through a story. There's a flow to it, and it's part of what we do as communicators. So I was wondering if you could speak to storytelling tips, because some people might be like, okay, this is all well and good, but I really don't know how to tell a story. If somebody else did this presentation, it might have just been a very boring, but you were so engaging. How did you develop your storytelling skills? If somebody wants to improve, what are the tips that you can share for that person?
So one of the first things I will say, if you want to improve your ability to tell stories, is to allow your mind roam. Be curious. Don't stifle your curiosity. And that's very rich coming from me, because I'm not an adventurous or curious person in person, but in my head, I go places. So I think that's one angle. Always remember that even though you're writing to your audience, right? Your audience is an example of you. Your audience is an example of you. You're also relatable. So chances are stuff that you would enjoy and find interesting, there is a possibility that your audience will find it interesting at all. So one thing I'll say, if you want to do improve your storytelling technique, even in presentations, is try to identify what people want to hear, what is of interest to your audience, and then build around that. Oh, I saw another really interesting question. Okay, I'll get to that.
People are now asking lots of questions. Can you give us a few minutes to answer these questions? Thank you.
Fine. So I would say, for example, when you're doing presentation, especially you're presenting numbers or successes to your audience, what you want to do is identify what's interesting and build a story around that. You can't tell a story about every single thing. For example, let's say you're presenting success or growth metrics in your organization, for example, over the last 5 years. You don't want to start explaining, oh, in 1999, here's a nice story, blah. No, but you can look for really, really interesting points that will grab your users, your readers or your listeners' attention at different points in your presentation, such that you're calling them back. Whenever their minds are wandering, you're bringing them back. You can insert little anecdotes. If there's a number that stands out and there's something significant that happened there, tell a story. If in the course of something there was a fun experience that happened, mention it there. These are small ways that you can introduce storytelling, and over time you'll find that it becomes habit. The more you do, the easier it will get. And then there's somebody's question. Somebody said, how do you share what you've done without exaggerating? Because personally, I feel all advertisements are greatly exaggerated. Not really. I think that the reason you feel that all advertisements are greatly exaggerated is that they are in a short space of time. So adverts are largely 1 minute max. You don't really want to do an advert that is more than 2 minutes or something like that. And in that 2 minutes, you have to pack a punch. So that's why it feels that way. It's not really that they are being exaggerated. It's just that you have to feel all the feels in a short amount of time. But one way you can share what you've done or what you've accomplished without exaggerating is to say it. In the last 10 years, I have done this. And also another thing that makes people feel like you're exaggerating is when you don't attribute success. So if you worked with somebody, if you had support in some angle, say so. Don't take all the glory for yourself. That's when it begins to look like you're really, really bragging. And then know when you've talked about something enough. Don't always have to go back and say, because as a front runner in this, and then when you say something else, you say, oh, but as a thought leader in this space. Speak your truth and let it end there. And I think that will be fine. How do you share your success as an introvert when you don't want to be out there or feel exposed? You can develop a persona like Beyonce. You can create your own Sasha Fierce, and that's the person that goes onto the stage. And when you come down, you can revert to your normal introvert self. But that's just on a side note. What I would say is, sharing you don't need to be dramatic or or too out there or so superfluous if you're sharing your story. You don't need to become a person that's different from who you are. Your story in itself is powerful. The only thing you need to do is that just tell yourself that every time I'm going to tell my story, I will give this story the best representation it deserves. So if something is exciting in your story, add some excitement into your voice. If there is a place where, you know, there was indecision and turmoil and torment and you're telling the story, learn how to use inflections and tones in your voice. Learn how to vary the volume and the seeing them. Like I can't see everybody here, but at certain points where I thought there was need for excitement, I myself smiled. You know, I excited myself. I made myself happy, and I think that's why it came through in my own presentation. So that's a small way that you can put yourself out there. Oh, did somebody lose me at a point?
Yeah, but just for like a few seconds, but you came back in.
Yeah, so I think I've answered all the questions.
Yeah, I believe you have. And if you have any more questions, please connect with her and I'm sure she'll be happy to answer. Emerald, we're really grateful for your time this morning. Thank you for the energy and passion with which you shared. It's obvious that you're really passionate about this topic. And we thank you for just sharing your knowledge and information with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are.
Yeah.
Okay,
bye.
bye.
Have a great one, guys.